Hello there, everybody. And today, for my Halloweenish reviews, I'm reviewing Terror Tales Part 2. This is part of regular shows' Halloweenish specials that they do every season, ever since season 3. And this time, the guys are on their way to a Halloween party, but they get lost in traffic, so they decide to tell some scary stories. I actually really do like this special. I definitely like part one. That was probably the most scary of the stories. This one definitely feels the most creativeness of the scary stories, in my opinion. And I do like their costumes. Mordecai's dressed as a Frankenstein, Rigby's dressed as a wrestler, Benson's a pirate, Thomas is just a bandit, High Five Ghost just has a mustache, Pops is a mummy, Muscle Man's dressed as Abe Lincoln, and Skip seems to be a vampire. But this one of the stories they do tell is about Mordecai's uncle, Uncle Steve. It's during a bowling game. They decide to borrow some money to play one more game, and Mordecai wants to do it, but he accidentally bumps into his uncle, causing him to get thrown into the bowling machine because his tie gets stuck into it, and then he dies. And for some reason, there's no one at the funeral other than just Mordecai and Rigby. But Mordecai feels guilty over what happened to his uncle, but it isn't until he is visited by the ghost of his uncle who has glowing green eyes and he starts to chase Mordecai everywhere he goes. Even every picture of Pops in the house starts to become Uncle Steve until the duo finally go to his grave until Uncle Steve just says, "Hey, I forgot to pay you back." And of course, Uncle Steve just gives Mordecai back his money, and then that's the story. And then, of course, it terrifies Pops, causing Benson to get mad of every time they tell a scary story. They're worried Pops is going to get upset, even though Pops is a grown ass man. But the next story is told by Margaret. And this is probably my favorite of the Terror Tales stories. This is where they go on the party bus. So this is where Mordecai, Margaret, Eileen, and Rigby all decide to go on a party bus after their taxi is late. But there's a big twist with this party bus. It's revealed that the longer you stay on the party bus, you start to age, and they start to notice. We get this little hint when everyone has white hair, and they think that it's just a big sale on white wigs. But the one dude who's on the party bus is like, "Oh, I guess people are partying too hard," until he gets old, and then he dies of old age, and it's sad to watch. This is what terrifying that it is for the party bus. The longer you stay, the older you get. But if you go backwards, you turn into a baby, and then you just become unborn. But the gang tried to stop the driver, but of course he keeps going, and he even says you can't stop the party bus. But of course, the gang try to reverse it. They reverse the brakes, and of course, they start to de-age, and they become babies. It's funny seeing the baby versions of them. Kind of reminds me of like the Muppet Babies. But of course, they get on top of the bus, and once they jump off, they cease to exist, basically, and they're unborn. And I thought that scene was hilarious as they all say, "Whoa!" That story was definitely funny as Margaret tries to explain the story was scary, but of course it terrifies Pops. But Benson doesn't get too mad. He just tells them no more stories. But it isn't until they accidentally get into a car crash, causing them to get picked up by a tote guy. And of course, they decide to tell one more story, and Benson, of course, doesn't approve of it until he decides to tell the story himself. And this one's called The Wallpaper Man. So, The Wallpaper Man is where Mordecai and Rigby are forced to put on new wallpaper for the whole house because they drew on it and cut a hole into it. And I thought the drawing was even funny, saying, "This job is like a prison." But out of nowhere, the TV shows up, revealing to be a Wallpaper Man commercial, and it's made by a man named Jan. and of course he's gonna offer it for free. But the guys decide to go along with this deal with the wallpaper man, and he literally comes to the house, and he's like, "Oh, I'll fix this house on top." And the two basically just play video games for the rest of the day. And then when they do see the wallpaper man, they realize there's something more sinister about him. Literally, he decides to wallpaper Pops, and of course, it's revealed that he has fangs, so there's something more sinister. But of course, Mordecai and Rigby and Pops decide to go look for Benson, who they hear his screams, and they literally almost get trapped in the house because there's so much wallpaper. Literally everything is covered in wallpaper, but they decide to just scratch through the wallpaper until they finally find a secret cave in the house that's revealed to be where Jan is, and he's revealed to be a giant spider. And the spider transition, him turning from a human to a spider, actually looked gross to look at. But of course, the entire gang's tied up in wallpaper. But it's up to Mordecai and Rigby to take him down. And of course, they free the others, and of course they all escape except for Mordecai and Rigby. And this is pretty cold of Benson. He tells Mordecai and Rigby to stay behind just so they can take down the man. Says, "Oh, it's not my problem." It's just so cold-hearted of him. But of course, Mordecai and Rigby try to insult Jan and throw various rocks at him until later they find a group of grenades that because there was also a man trying to deliver a package for Muscle Man who was buying hand grenades, and so they decide to throw the hand grenades into the spider, but of course the bombs go off, causing Mordecai and Rigby to die in the house, and it ends on a cliff, not really cliffhanger, but just ends with the park house getting blown up. But of course, Mordecai and Rigby don't like this story, saying they're not that dumb. But of course, Benson's pissed. But once they do arrive at the party, Rigby decides to throw a tantrum and it causes a car crash. And they all die in the car crash, causing them to turn into ghosts, except for High Five Ghost, since he's a ghost. But of course, they decide to just go into the party, and Benson fires Rigby. But of course, he says, "You can't fire me, I'm dead." I thought that scene was hilarious, but it ends with the gang going into the party anyway. But I don't know. I guess this episode's not canon since they die, but it's not really meant to be taken seriously since it's a Halloween special. Kind of like how Beavis and Butthead, where Beavis dies by the crazy farmer. Kind of reminds me of that. But Terror Tales Part Two was definitely one of my favorites of out of all of them. I do. My favorite was probably the party bus one, and this one, the Mordecai's uncle one. That one was fine, but overall, I think this special was really good. Just a lot of excuses just to kill off the characters in a very over the top way in a story format. That's what I really like about these Terror Tales ones. It's just meant to be a crazy Halloween special for a regular show. Some of my favorite episodes. One thing I like to note is on Hulu, they only had half of this episode on Hulu. I don't know what that's about. I hope Hulu can or Disney Plus can fix the Terror Tale episodes of regular show so we can watch the full episode. That was very disappointing in my opinion. But I'd definitely give this special definitely a 10 out of 10 for sure. The next year I'll definitely talk about the third part. I'm excited for it. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time.